now?
At this particular moment, somewhere between 20 and 30 million.
Oh, wow. Can I say hi from the earth? And I love the Susani family.
Well, you just did.
Awesome. Um, Bashar, I would like to ask about, I recently heard you said in a transmission from some years ago, you were describing the process when you were born on your world
Yes.
and how you were joined telepathically immediately by everyone and shared and welcome to the world, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I would like to know if it's the same process for the hybrid children when they are born.
It hasn't been the same process, but in the future, ultimately, it will be. They are a little bit more physically oriented so that they can relate to your reality and you can relate to them. So for now, they don't exactly experience birth in the way that we do. They experience it a little bit more closely to the way you do, although, of course, there are major differences in that they are genetically produced and nurtured and brought into maturation in a different way. But ultimately, living among you, they will reproduce pretty much the way you reproduce and will continue to reproduce for many, many years to come.
Okay, and so when do they develop their telepathy? As I understand they're very telepathic.
They are already developing their telepathy as they are educated in a variety of endeavors. Their telepathy is part of them and, in a sense, genetically bred into them.
Okay. Wow, that is wonderful. So, expanding on that idea, I was interested in understanding the telepathic link that the children have with their parents, and how imagination plays a role in this, because I experience a lot of synchronicity with my children.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, sometimes I play games, I bake cookies for them, and I pretend like I'm having an imaginary friend.
Yes, you are helping to give them examples of how things are done on Earth. You are helping as part of the training program so that they can understand how humans on Earth go about doing things in your society. That's part of the program.
Okay, so when I pretend that I'm there with me, sometimes I notice that new energy kind of comes into my imagination, and I can tell that I'm being joined by new
Yes,
children.
they're paying attention. It's like they're joining the class.
Okay, wow. So that was another question that I have. So how could we as parents, as human parents, help them with their development? So keep doing those things.
Yes, show them how things are done.
Whatever they are excited in the moment, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So another question I have is I've been practicing your lucid dream exercises, and I have become way more lucid during the dream and also in my life. And lately I've been able to have conversations with some beings during the dream time.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you. And one thing that I asked a few times, where am I? And they said, you are on a city ship.
Yes.
And so I wanted to ask you if that's the same as a mothership, and if you could describe.
Yes, basically. It's just a matter of size. It's just a matter of degree. City ships can be motherships. Motherships can be city ships. Sometimes the city ships might be larger than motherships. It just depends, again, on the size, the purpose, how many people are on board at any given moment. So it's just a matter of degree.
Okay. And do they have pilots specifically for the city ships?
Yes, again, like all our ships, all the way down to the scout ship, up to the mother and city ships, there is usually one or a few beings that are telepathically connected, because remember, our ships are grown. They are physical crystallized representations of our own higher minds, and therefore the city ships can actually be representative of a collective as well. And therefore a few different beings can, in a sense, function as the pilots of those ships, because they are telepathically connected to the higher minds that are included in the collective that is represented by the ship.
Okay. And do they travel from one star to the other in the same way that you have described before, by changing the location variable?
Yes.
Okay.
If they want a great jump, yes. Otherwise, by traveling more slowly, again, we just simply take advantage of electromagnetic and gravity energy and things like that to travel more slowly. But going from star to star with a quick jump, yes, it's the same technique that we have described in changing the locational variable in the object.
Okay, and do you have to include in that kind of equation all the frequency of all the beings that are within the ship?
Yes, but the ship does that automatically because remember, it's the higher mind that contains all of those beings. Therefore, the ship takes care of that equation. It would be too complex for the individuals themselves to have to factor all that in. So the way the ships are designed, the way the consciousness operates, takes care of all of that and includes everyone aboard.
Okay, so thank you for that explanation. So when you mentioned that parents of the children sometimes are taking aboard the ships for just spending time with the children, does the consciousness of the ship is the one that kind of works with your higher mind to get you on board the ship?
It's connected, yes. There are other techniques going on there too and other engagements and involvements, but yes, it has to include your vibration in order to allow you to be aboard in the way that you need to be.
Okay, and when we join the ships, are we being taken there physically or is like an astral projection that we do?
It can be either.
Okay. I'm very fascinated with this right now because of all the dreams that I have.
Yes, what you remember as dreams can be representative of having been shifted astrally or even physically. It's just that you only remember them as dreams.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, another question that I had was about mathematics.
Yes.
And our scientists said that mathematics can explain the universe.
In a sense, it can explain the underlying structure of your physical reality. Now, again, we don't necessarily use in our reality mathematical notation in the way that your scientists do. We use geometric configurations to represent similar things. So it's a different language, but it basically represents the same idea that existence can, in its underlying form of expression on different levels, be described by different relationships, mathematically or geometrically speaking, different relationships, different ratios, so on and so forth. You recognize these things in your reality as golden proportions, phi ratios, fractal progressions, and things like that.
Okay, that's the area that I'm most interested about because I'm a designer and I've been studying the pattern creation in nature, and then I was just curious if you could, with our mathematics, if we could understand, for example, I remember you talking about the inside out universe.
Yes.
That is completely different. So will the mathematics that we understand eventually help us, let's say, represent mathematically that universe, or that's a
Yes, it will. It can. It's capable of doing so in the terms that you need, yes.
Okay. So is there anything like the mathematics of consciousness?
Yes, and to some degree, that's actually what we're talking about.
Okay.
Because consciousness has to express itself in a certain way to be representative of a certain level of reality. So this is why we say consciousness, as a template underlying physical reality, expresses itself as a tetrahedral structure, or a series of them.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that was an expression of consciousness within our,
Well, everything is an expression of consciousness. It's just that what we're describing now is the way consciousness expresses itself in certain geometric ratios and proportions and relationships, and that translates to an underlying template that expresses itself as tetrahedral structures that are intersecting and embedded with one another in certain ways.
Okay.
Some of your quantum physicists are beginning to understand this. They have recently realized that the underlying template beyond and below subatomic levels is actually a tetrahedral structure that they're beginning to realize is actually an expression of a consciousness field.
Okay. That's fascinating.
Anything else?
Yeah, just a few more questions. One is about the your let's say job as a first contact specialist. I'm just curious about if that is a division in your planet that many people join, and in general, how many Sasani beings work when let's say you're working with planet Earth right now? So how many beings that have your same, let's say, speciality of being a first contact specialist interact with her so that the project can be, I don't know, like accomplished, if that's like.
At this particular moment, there are 13 first contact specialists from my society that are in some way, shape, or form involved with Earth.
Okay. And that number changes. It
depends.
Okay.
But in my society, again, give or take, there are approximately, right now, approximately 10,000 first contact specialists.
Okay, that is wonderful. And are they all part of the same lineage of your family, or they're different?
No.
They don't have to be. Okay.
No.
Yes, perfect. My last question is about a dream that I had recently.
Yes.
And I would like to see if you can help me understand a bit more. It was with the Grays. Lately, I've been feeling very strongly connected to the Grays, many dreams with them. But this one was very lucid, and I was inside a structure I cannot really explain. I know that my brain was having a hard time with this scenario. But there was a being inside the dream that I could access and talk to. And I asked, who are you? And the being said, I'm not a biological entity. I'm a artificial intelligence consciousness.
Yeah.
And then I saw kind of like a geometric structure of energy and many points of lights. And then for each point of light, I saw a gray, and I felt that connection within my own brain. And then a serious being showed up and said, relax, kid, that's the hive mind. And then I woke up and I had a headache for the whole day, but I had the feeling of the Grace with me the whole day. So I would like.
That's a relatively rare gift, to be given a sense and a connection to the idea of the Gray's hive mind. So cherish it. It will serve you in the future.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bashar. That was incredible. I felt like it was a gift, and I really.
It is. And it will serve you well in connecting to other aspects of your own being in the future and integrating these things as you go further into the hybridization agenda with the hybrid children.
So I was accurate on my intuition with the dream.
Yes.
One really quick idea I wanted to ask you. When you're in the future land in our planet, do you think will be of your excitement to wear a Hawaiian t-shirt?
No.
Okay. I had a dream that as a sunny being was wearing one, and it was.
That's because you are blending the idea of myself with the channel, because the idea is that the channel is becoming more his version of me. So you're seeing, no pun intended, a hybrid symbol of both of us.
Oh, okay. That's what happens when someone is channeling. It's becoming a third entity in the process of channeling, right?
Yes. So thank you and good day.
Thank you so much, Bashar. Have a great day.
Belief system, because many of you may have an idea of what the fairy tales, Sleeping Beauty and Rumpelstiltskin, may represent, and what elements within them may be positive and or negative. But you may be surprised to find that there may be some things that are the opposite of what you may think. So before we dive into the idea of being able to tell the difference between the positive and negative belief systems that these fairy tales represent, let us give you a very brief recap so that each of you can remember, because it may be a while since you've heard them, what these fairy tale stories are actually all about. In Sleeping Beauty, you have the idea of a great feast that was arranged because of the birth of the princess to the king and queen. But there was only so much room at the table for all the guests that they chose to invite, some of which were the fairies of the land. And so, because there was one fairy that they didn't necessarily feel had the best of intentions, the best of energy, they chose to not invite that particular fairy. But that particular fairy heard about the feast nevertheless, and showed up at a point where many of the other fairies had already bestowed their magical gifts upon the princess, except for one. And so, upon her arrival, this fairy, being very offended at not being invited, chose to put a curse upon the princess and said that on her 16th birthday, she would prick her finger on the needle of a spinning wheel and die. Now, everyone was very distraught, of course, at this. And after that fairy left, the final fairy, who had not yet bestowed her gift upon the princess, could only bestow just enough to change the curse to the point where the princess would not die, but would simply fall asleep until such time as someone would come along and with a kiss awaken her. That is the basic gist of Sleeping Beauty. Rumpelstiltskin, a little bit different, where a poor man had a daughter, and it was time for this man to pay taxes, but not having the money, the poor man promised his daughter to the king instead, promising that she had the magical ability to spin straw into gold. Well, the king could not pass this up, and so he took the daughter to the castle and locked her in a room with straw and a spinning wheel and said, "If you will spin this straw into gold, you will gain your freedom and I will marry you." Now, the princess in that sense, or the girl, not yet a princess, was beside herself because she had no ability whatsoever to spin straw into gold. Nevertheless, at some point, the door creaked open, and a little elemental man named Rumpelstiltskin came into the room without revealing his name and said, "I can help you. I can spin this straw into gold. But what will you give me in return?" And so the princess had some jewelry. She handed over. The little man accepted and got about spinning the straw into gold. The next day, when the king arrived, he was astonished to see a room full of gold instead of straw. But now the king got a little bit greedy and said, "All right, well, I'm not going to free you yet, not going to marry you yet. I'm going to put you in another room with more straw that you will spin into gold." And so again, the girl was distraught, but once again the little man showed up and said, "I will do this for you again, but what will you give me?" And again, the girl only had at this point left her ring, which she gave to the little man, who then set about spinning the straw into gold. And again the next day, the king was astonished to find even more gold than before. And being a little bit greedy still, said, "All right, well, you have to do this one more time to prove your worth. And so I will now fill the room with straw, which you will spin into gold." And so again, the girl was very distraught. And the man showed up, but the girl said, "I have nothing left to give you." And so the little man thought about it and said, "You do, for when you marry the king, you will bear a child, and it is the child that you will give to me." Being desperate, the girl agreed. And so the little man spun all of the straw in the room into gold, and the next day the king showed up and was absolutely amazed at a room full of gold, and on the spot freed the girl and promised that he would marry, and so they did. And as time went by, the girl had a child that she loved dearly. And one day, once again, the little man showed up and said, "It is time to honor our agreement. You must give me your firstborn child." Now, the girl had grown very, very fond of this child and did not want to do that. The little man insisted, "You must. It is our agreement." And so he said, "I will go away and come back, but at that time, you must say goodbye to your child, for I will take it." Now the girl thought about what to do and thought and thought and thought. And the little man had said before he left, "There is only one way that you can break this agreement, and that would be if you can guess my name." And so the girl thought and thought and thought of all the names she could think of, and had many different servants go throughout the land and collect all the names she could think of. And she looked at the list and thought, none of these seem to be the kind of name that this little man would have, this elemental being, this elemental spirit. I am at a loss. Until she thought, I will have one servant go and find him and spy on him, and perhaps he will learn something. And so she sent her servant out into the woods. Eventually, the servant was able to track down the little man who was dancing in a glade and singing a song in which he revealed his name to be Rumpelstiltskin. And so he went back to the queen and said, this is his name. And so when the little man showed up again, he said, have you guessed my name? And she said, is it this and is it that? Toying with him, for she knew his name. And he said, no, you owe me the child. And finally she said, is it Rumpelstiltskin? And in a fit of rage, the little man disappeared, for she had guessed his name and broken the vow, and was able to keep the child and live happily ever after. Now, in these two stories, there are many different kinds of things that here and there may be positive and negative on their own. But if we examine the concept, first of all, of Sleeping Beauty, while it may seem to be a positive ending, a positive outcome, the prince comes along and kisses her, she awakes, and they live happily ever after, there are many different symbols in here that actually turn this story into something quite different. First and foremost, the idea being that in the original feast, when the child was born, not inviting that particular fairy is symbolic and representative of the invalidation of a negative belief. And because the negative belief was invalidated, then in a sense it amplified and bounced back with the idea of the curse. Now the curse was mitigated by the final fairy into nothing more than a slumber. But this is simply indicative of the fact that you always have an indestructible core. And no matter how many fear-based or negative beliefs that you may invalidate within you or give energy to, you will always have the ability to mitigate them, to soften them out by remembering that they are just beliefs. And they have no real ultimate power until such time as you decide that they do. And so when Sleeping Beauty found the spinning wheel, regardless of the fact that they had tried to destroy all the spinning wheels in the kingdom, she found one hidden away, pricked her finger, and fell into a long slumber. And in fact, in the story, everyone in the kingdom fell asleep for 100 years. Until such time as 100 years later, with no one aging while they slept, a prince came along, kissed her, woke her up, and she lived happily ever after. However, the symbology here is the symbology of victimhood, succumbing to the idea that you have no power to be able to really defeat this other than the flow of creation and synchronicity, which, as we have said, slightly bends in the direction of positive energy rather than negative, because the balance point between positive and negative, the neutral balance point, still offers you the ability to choose. And if there is nothing else that you do, because the universe then, creation then, is slightly more positive than negative, you will simply start to drift toward the positive. And this is what has happened in this story, is that as she slumbered, there was no actions taken, nothing that could be done until such time, 100 years later, that the flow of creation and synchronicity finally attracted the prince, who then allowed her to awake. But you see, the real symbology here is that, in a sense, Sleeping Beauty died and had to be awoken into a different plane of existence, into a different reality, the spirit realm, than to live happily ever after. So in a sense, the tale of Sleeping Beauty, while it may have bits and pieces that are positive and negative within it, overall is a tale of victimhood and the succumbing to the idea of needing to be rescued and not taking any actions in order to be able to rescue yourself, but only relying on nothing more than the flow of creation and synchronicity to pull you out of it, but not having lived that life at all, and having to go on to another plane of existence in order to continue to experience the idea of your happiness. Whereas Rumpelstiltskin, while having, again, what seems to be many negative aspects to it, the girl is sold off by her father, the girl is trapped in the castle, the girl is forced to do things she's not able to do, the girl is forced to give up things in order to transform in a way that will free her, by relying on the little man, the elemental being, to spin the straw into gold. Nevertheless, even though she may have in some sense exhibited victimhood throughout the story to a certain degree, at a certain point she took charge. She ordered her servants to go find names. She ordered her servant to find the little man and find out his name. In other words, what this represents is the identification of the fear-based belief. She was able to identify it literally by finding the little man's name. And in finding the name, in identifying the fear-based belief and bringing it into the light of her consciousness, she was able to break free from that and let it go and truly take the actions that were required to keep her child, to be the queen, to be free, and to truly live happily ever after by her own actions. Therefore, the overall tale of Rumpelstiltskin, no matter how many negative elements it may have contained, is a positive outcome based on her ability to be self-reliant, self-activated, and actually identify and release the fear-based belief that had beset her up to that point. So within these kinds of stories, and within the stories you may tell yourselves about who you are, what you believe to be true about yourselves in life, while sometimes you may think certain things represent a positive idea, they may actually represent a negative one in the sense of feeling like you must be rescued and you can't do it yourself. That is disempowerment. Whereas, no matter how negative things may seem up to a certain point, the acceptance of your own power and the willingness to investigate those fear-based beliefs will always bring you the information you need to divest yourself of them and truly create by your own actions the freedom that you deserve in life. To claim your own true birthright, to be who you truly are. So, let yourself discern more clearly when you tell yourself stories about yourself which is truly positive and which is truly negative, so that you can always have the ability to be active in your self-investigation, to know yourself, become transparent to yourself, and free yourself with the truth of who you really are. We thank you now for allowing us to share this particular perspective with you in Fairy Tales for Grown-ups, and we ask in return, how may we continue to be of service to you? You may begin with your questions and discussions if you wish.
You are on a spiritual level. It is not something they have to deal with. It is something they have heard about, but again, find it challenging to understand or comprehend how such a thing is possible. It's not their path to understand that. It's the path of a first contact specialist or a social engineer to understand that. And therefore, they don't worry about it. They just don't really understand how to comprehend it.
And is it our path to remember, to figure out, remember?
Yes. That's how you grow.
And is it by doing the formula that we can remember?
That's certainly the strongest way. That's why we give it to you. It's the simplest way that you don't have to overcomplicate or overthink. And within the formula, of course, there are many opportunities to be attracted to do things in the way that are representative of your individual passions that are unique to you. So within the formula, there are many, many, many unique ways of experiencing it, but the formula still works for all.
Wonderful. I'm interested in understanding how your people feel and perceive the excitement of meeting us when open contact happens on Earth.
We are very excited about it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be engaging with you because, again, we only follow our passions. So the recognition of joining, as we have with many other civilizations, whether it be in a structured interstellar alliance or even a loose association or friendship, is expansive to us to allow us to experience different ways that different beings have of relating to the idea of existence. It expands our understanding. It expands our knowledge. It expands our experience. You have experiences we do not have, allowing us to experience some of those things, to understand how different beings can create challenges that allow them to discover things in a very different way than the way that we do or other civilizations do, is very exciting to discover, because it adds to the overall uniqueness of all the different facets of all that is, and allows us to understand more of all the ways that all that is has of experiencing itself, which expands our understanding of the infiniteness of all that is. This is very exciting to us.
Will music play a significant part in upcoming Open Contact? I heard about an event where ET ships respond to our music festival lights. Music is often a way that humans raise their vibrations. Is there any chance that we can witness a mass sighting with some of your representatives during a music festival? It would be great to see your lights in the sky joining the rhythm of our music.
Yes, this is quite possible and maybe very probable, not necessarily right away, but in the years to come.
Oh. Can you tell us a little bit more about the music festivals that you might like?
No.
Okay. What is your current ship height above Sedona?
Approximately 1,500 miles.
Are you at Bell Rock?
Above Bell Rock, yes. 1,500 miles above Bell Rock.
I've recently seen ships near my house that I've previously not seen. These ships appear to be descending lower to the ground. Is there a reason for this? What is happening?
Again, as you all expand your consciousness, you also sharpen your senses to start peering into other dimensions. These things have been around you all the time. Like I say, there's a lot of traffic around your planet. But the idea is that they have usually been outside the vibrational frequency of your senses. But as you expand your consciousness, you can start to see things that you couldn't see before.
Which country is Open Contact most likely to occur first as you read the energies now?
Who says there will be a first country? Who says Open Contact won't happen simultaneously all around your planet? Why would there just be one country? That's not Open Contact.
Right. Can you tell us more about a unique civilization in our galaxy that we've never heard of before?
One moment. One moment. We are looking for what might be most relevant. We have not told you yet about a civilization within the Interstellar Alliance that travels. These beings are in constant motion. They are not bipedal, they are quadrupedal. 4 legs, as you would understand it. They are constantly moving. Very rarely do they rest. Very rarely do they stop. Their world is patterned in such a way as to allow them to travel long distances. They do this as a matter of gathering information. They do this as a matter of learning. They are constantly, almost constantly on the move, even moving while they rest. They have the same kind of capacity that your dolphins have to have half of their brains sleep while the other half remains awake so that they can constantly move, constantly learn. These beings have created a society that exists within nature in such a way that they have, shall we say, guided nature, trained nature to create certain structures that they use as shelters that they can pass through. But most of these shelters are very long and tunnel-like because they keep moving. And the shelters provide for them information, entertainments, stories, experiences as they move through these long natural tunnels, either in the earth or made of their version of trees or plants. The beings are ranging in size from about the size of what you would call an medium-sized dog to the size of a small horse and sizes in between. They do have a head. They do have two eyes. They have, similar to the idea, as an extension off the face, a muzzle with nose and mouth, but they are not really dog-like. They are not really horse-like. It is quite different. They sometimes will wear certain kinds of drapings, but not really clothing as you understand it. The temperatures on their planet don't necessarily require them to wrap themselves in something to protect against the weather or the elements. It is generally relatively mild. They do have rain. It is rare that they experience things like snow. Therefore, you would find the environment there relatively pleasant, relatively even temperatured. These beings call themselves something that would translate to you in your language as the phrase moving with the wind. But we cannot replicate their language for you. It is completely non-human and requires the kinds of vocal cords that they have that cannot be replicated in a human body. But the translation of their name for themselves is like moving along with the wind. Does that answer your question?
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yes.
You've spoken about stars and civilizations within the Milky Way, the Pleiades, Orion, Sirius. Have you traveled to other galaxies outside the Milky Way?
Our civilization and many members of it have had experiences in other galaxies, the Magellanic Clouds, as you call them, and even the idea of the Andromeda Galaxy. It is relatively rare that we venture outside what you call the Milky Way galaxy, but again, do remember that we are in our natural state, another parallel reality altogether. There are some slightly different configurations of galaxies in our reality that you don't have in yours, and we have visited some of those as well. But it is rare that we venture beyond the edge of the galaxy that you would call the Milky Way galaxy in our reality. Their time. Right now, it is premature.
Okay. You've explained that open contact is not just about contact with you humans, but also contact with all life on Earth. Are there any species on Earth besides humans which you are particularly interested in contacting, which humans are not aware of?
It's not that there are species you are unaware of that we will be in contact with. It's just that because of their nature, there has already been telepathic contact with beings such as dolphins, whales, other cetaceans, with other beings on your planets that you would recognize as animals, and even with the idea of some of your trees and the elementals of your world as well. So you may not know about all the elementals, and we will be having greater contact with them as well. But we have already initiated many telepathic contacts with the elementals of your world already.
This person has a question about, I'm going to try and sum it up. She has a 22-month-old son, and she watches your transmissions on a big screen TV, and her son usually plays in the background. But she's been noticing that every time Darryl starts to get into his channeling state, her son either looks away, looks down, or goes and hides. And then as soon as Bashar comes out, the son goes and plays again as usual. She wants to know what is happening here. Why is he doing this?
He is reacting to the transition from one state to another, from a state that he is getting used to as the so-called day-to-day normal vibrational state of your reality, and therefore is open to the idea of the vibrational state of our reality, but the transition is challenging for him between the two, because it reminds him of the connections to spirit, and in some way takes him away from what he's needing to learn by anchoring into your physical reality. The transitional state makes him feel like he is disconnecting from physical reality, and therefore he avoids it, because his job, his task, his challenge as chosen is to make sure he stays connected to the idea of the physical reality he has chosen to experience. So it's just the transition that challenges him.
And is this something that very young children, so they're more sensitive to these energies? And
yes, of course. Yes, of course. Because again, they are still highly connected to spirit consciously.
Mm-hmm. What is the percentage at for open contact in the current window or for the mid 2026, 2027 range?
The event that we have discussed that may occur in high probability, over 90% at the end of 26, the beginning of 27, is not literally open contact. Please don't misunderstand. It is an event that will lead to open contact. It is not open contact itself, but it is something that can cause a great shift in your consciousness, in your awareness of the possibility of open contact, but it is not open contact itself.
Why do we often avoid pain when seeking clarity and change? Considering daily aspirin use, which can mask pain but not address the underlying issues, reveals a paradox. Why do we choose the human experience, seemingly filled with pain, compared to integrating alien or universal aspects?
Remember that pain is the result of resistance to the natural self. While it's all well and good sometimes to alleviate pain with the methods that you have in your medicines and healing arts, it is very important to understand the underlying causes of it, because that's part of the challenge you have come to face, is how can you transform the idea of resistance to your true self in a way that will allow you to go beyond the idea of experiencing pain, but doing it by understanding the issues that challenge you so that your soul can grow and discover something new. So it's about facing those challenges and finding out where the pain comes from, why you are resisting your true self, what belief systems you are holding on to that are out of alignment with who you are, rather than just numbing the pain so you don't have to think about those things. That's just avoidance.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk about trauma and trauma responses? This person says that my nervous system automatically goes into fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode when I get triggered. I have carried pain and emotional issues in my body since childhood.
You have not carried them since childhood. You are recreating them every moment because you have a belief system that says you have a reason to do so, that you believe benefits you. So again, this goes to the motivational mechanism. You have to discover why you would believe that you need to constantly recreate these things, and why you are afraid, more afraid of the alternative rather than letting them go. This is a very deep and complex subject. In this format, in this forum, we do not have time to deeply address all of these issues since we are not actually interacting with this person directly. But basically, that's it. You're not carrying anything from childhood. You are recreating things every single moment in the present because you believe it's necessary for you to do so to avoid what your belief system says would be even a more painful alternative. So you have to discover why you believe letting go of those things would be worse than simply moving forward in the direction of your truth.
How can I stay connected with my son if I shift to a parallel Earth? I'm focused on raising my vibration, but leaving him behind worries me. He's been manipulated by his father for nearly 2 years, and he's not in a high vibration. If he doesn't shift, how can I communicate with him? As a mother, how can I support him in this human experience if we can't interact due to different vibrations?
Again, remember that everyone has their path. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. Just maintain an unconditional love for this being. Be there for him if and when he decides to reach out or change. Allow him his path. That's all you can do right now. Again, this is a very deep and complex subject that may require more direct communication with this person. But the idea is you need to support with unconditional love whatever path the soul has chosen and whatever challenges that soul has chosen to experience in their lives, and be an open and receiving presence in his life that is there for him if and when he should decide to change and reach out to you, so that he knows he can do that. Just let him know he can do that, but don't insist that he must.
Thank you. I recently heard your transmission about our 7 needs: air, water, sleep, food, shelter, connection, and self-expression. I spend so much time and energy making sure me and my family have the first 5 needs met. It feels like I have nothing left to dedicate to connection and self-expression, which I long for. How can I be more efficient with the first 5 in order to have space to focus on the last 2? Is it just a frame of mind shift? Can you please give me some guidance?
Yes, it is a big frame of mind shift. In other words, you need to open up your creative imagination and figure out how to do the first 5 in a way that is more in alignment with your passion, rather than going about doing them in the way that your society has told them is the only way that they can be done. So you need to open up your creativity and find the way that works for you to do them, so that the way you do them becomes more effortless, more efficient, more streamlined, more synchronistic. That will allow you the opportunity to allow you to attract all 7 in the way that is the path of least resistance for you. Because again, if you're following the formula, all these things, all these needs will fit into the way in which you do things in life that is more representative of the way that works for you, rather than attempting to do them in the way your society has taught you are the only way to do them.
Thank you. We have a lot of love questions. Can a romantic love relationship and personal freedom coexist with each other when a person is in an established romantic love relationship in which both acknowledge each other to be their lover? I mean, boyfriend, girlfriend.
Well, it depends on what you mean by quote unquote personal freedom. Because the idea is that if you really are reflecting to each other what you need to know, you are being honest with yourself about what kind of relationship works for you, then freedom in that relationship is a given, depending on what you are defining freedom to be. But the freedom to be yourself, your true self, begins with an honest expression of who you really are and what relationships are actually correct for you. Because if you're going into a relationship without having communicated what is truly representative of what you prefer, then you may be giving a false impression to the other person as to who you are and what kind of a relationship really works for you. So if you go in as your true, honest self, you will have all the freedom you need to be who you truly are, whatever that means, in terms of being in alignment with your truth, being in alignment with your passion, and being in alignment with the unconditional love you are expressing to the other person or people in the relationships, to allow them to discover more about who they are as they do the same for you. So look to your definition of what personal freedom means, and know that when you are being your true self, freedom in a relationship is part and parcel. Because why would a relationship that is true, that is truly representative of who you are, curtail your freedoms, the freedoms that are important to you, to be yourself in any way, shape, or form? That would make no sense. But you have to be honest about who you are and what kind of relationships are actually relevant for the true you.
A couple questions about twin flames. What is the purpose of the twin flame, and how can a person recognize that connection? And how can we foster the twin flame connection to come together in this dimension?
There can be many meanings to this idea. Now, it can be representative of a very strong agreement that two souls may have made to interact with each other in a particular way that truly reinforces one another's ability to become their true selves. Can be a very deep and abiding love experience. But the idea of the twin flame has been misunderstood by many people on your planet, in the idea that they must search for this. All you have to do is allow every relationship in your life to be as important as any other relationship, because everyone that is in your life is there for a reason and is giving you the opportunity to learn what you need to learn, or to be of service to them in ways that will help them. And in that sense, you're all twin flames for each other, because they're all equally important, even though they may not necessarily be expressed in the same way. So we would let go and encourage you to let go of the classic definition of seeking out your twin flame, and just move forward in the formula and attract what you need at any given moment that will serve you best.
If we transition to a parallel Earth that is a higher vibration than our current Earth, do you ever fall back to the initial version of Earth? If so, what reasons would that occur? For what reason?
Watch your definitions, because you don't fall back. You choose to lower your vibration. You choose to navigate to a version of Earth of a lower frequency. You don't fall back as if you have no control over this. So look to your definitions.
You said that we've already passed the point where there's no undoing climate change. Why is that? What happens to us from shifting to what keeps us from shifting to a parallel reality significantly different enough that it all seems to balance itself out? And maybe similarly, is this the same reason that we can't just navigate to a parallel reality where someone who seems to have died is back and present again with us physically?
Climate change is a natural cycle on your planet that has, to some degree, been exacerbated by human technology and sped up. What you're experiencing now, if it wasn't for the pollution on your planet in a variety of forms, probably would not have been experienced for another century or two. But it is a natural cycle. And you knew that coming in when you chose to incarnate. So it's part of the challenges you are facing that spur you to create things that can mitigate the idea of certain climate change discomforts and challenges for your society, to learn to adapt to these things in ways that will allow you to grow intellectually and on a soul and spiritual level. The idea is that you have agreed to face certain challenges that help you grow, and certain things are simply not relevant for those challenges. So you will not necessarily automatically resurrect people in a new reality that have died, because of the effect that their death has upon your soul's growth, in your ability to stretch yourself and reach out to them in spirit as opposed to simply continuing to have them around physically. The result of agreements you have made with all of these different beings are the results of the challenges that you face that will help your soul to grow in certain ways that you agreed to. And so you will not violate those changes. You will not violate those challenges.
I know that some children remember having chosen their parents. Do all of us choose our parents?
Yes. Every single one of you, for a variety of reasons. You may not think so, but you do. It doesn't mean that the reasons are the same for everyone. Sometimes you may choose parents you have absolutely nothing in common with, but because of the situations that you will face in that particular family, it may actually catapult you in the direction that you know you need to go, just because of those circumstances. So you choose them for a variety of reasons. It doesn't mean that you will necessarily be vibrationally compatible with who your parents are.
Mm-hmm. When following my highest excitement, my physical mind starts to come up and wants control. It's from a fear-based belief that it needs control for survival. Can you give a few suggestions how to relax the physical mind to surrender to the control of the higher mind?
Have a conversation with it. Allow yourself to assure the physical mind that it is absolutely valuable and absolutely necessary for you to have the experience you are having of physical reality, that it has a job to do and it's doing it brilliantly and doing it well. And the idea of connecting to the higher mind is not something that supersedes the physical mind. It is something that allows the physical mind to have a willing companion in life that it can work with, and that the control is shared in the sense of the physical mind understanding that the higher mind only has its best interests at heart, and therefore can relax the idea of its grip on needing certain kinds of control that are really not about control at all, but simply representative of a fear of being out of control. It needs to be told and needs to understand that the higher mind is presenting the physical mind through the energy of passion what it can experience as control automatically and easily, rather than having to work so hard at it. So you need to have this conversation with your physical mind that the higher mind is giving the physical mind an opportunity to experience what true control really is all about. And true control doesn't necessarily feel like an expenditure of effort. It feels like things are flowing very easily and fluidly, and the physical mind can relax into that flow and know that it is, in fact, experiencing the control that is built in to your being, to your soul.
Thank you. This person says, I'm new here. I just did the sacred circuit meditation today, and I started crying. My head started moving in the infinity shape, and sometimes like a spiral snake. Is that evidence of contact with you? Is there anything more you would like to add to this?
No, it is evidence of contact with higher frequency energies that are now coursing through your nervous system as your nervous system attempts to expand to get used to it.
Thank you. As a Jewish woman, I'm unable to understand the reason for the constant hate and unbelievable anti-Semitism that is erupting around our world. Can you please explain to me why the Jewish people are singled out throughout history, and why have other nations and people continued to call for our extermination to this day? What am I not seeing or understanding? What is the source of such hate and false narratives? From my perspective, the Jewish people enhanced the world, developed, contributed, created, etc. Why is the world so fixated on a group of people that only has 15.5 million in number? Who are the Jewish people from your perspective?
All right, now this is a deep subject, so we will take our time with this. You're not the only group, of course, that has experienced persecution. That's number one. But the reasons for it in your particular culture are generally as follows, if you can follow along with this and understand what we are saying. Long ago, as we have discussed, there was a group of extraterrestrials that you refer to as the Anu, or the Anunnaki, that inserted their genetic material into the early hominid species you know as Homo erectus and Neanderthals and so on and so forth to create Homo sapiens. The bloodlines of those extraterrestrials are sometimes stronger in certain groups than others, where they may not have been quite as diluted. The Jewish people in general carry some of the stronger bloodlines all the way back to the idea of the Anunnaki. Now, those that are out of touch, those that are not consciously aware of all of this going on, still have a subconscious or an unconscious recognition of the vibration of that bloodline in the Jewish people. And they recognize it in a way that is based on a negative connotation, that they were manipulated and controlled by the idea of that ancient extraterrestrial race in creating Homo sapiens as a workforce to help them do certain things. And so, in a sense, it can be experienced by certain people in a fearful way as slavery. Therefore, unconsciously and subconsciously, by feeling the vibration of that bloodline in the Jewish people that has been preserved over time by certain events, such as wandering in the desert for 40 years and isolating them from the rest of society for the span of time that represents a transformation in human culture, that remained the bloodline to be relatively clean and clear, genetically speaking, then they pick up on that vibration that you are still very close to the vibration of the Anunnaki who suppressed them and controlled them. And they have an unconscious resentment to that and react to that and have a fear about the idea that they're going to be controlled again in the same way. So it's a very ancient thing that exists within the survival mechanisms of human beings in their limbic system that picks up on that vibration of the ancient extraterrestrial genes that exist within that culture that they are very, very afraid of and haven't come to terms with yet consciously in your society. We hope you understand this explanation. Of course, there is a lot more detail to it, but we do not have time in this transmission to go that deeply into it. So we will trust that this will suffice for now.
Thank you. Wow. The title.
This is approaching the end of the questions for this particular transmission. Therefore, we will at this time suggest that you now allow yourselves to end the questions and move forward with the idea of the remainder of this transmission and balance and center yourselves in the understanding of the steps we are now delivering to all of you that can, if you so desire, to participate in them, help refine your vibrations specifically and tune your vibrations specifically to the vibration of the interstellar alliance and open contact. So, open yourselves up and breathe at this time.
It's voluntary. But are we kind of like guinea pigs in this experiment? Is this experiment just as new for us as it is for you? And have you done this, or have you done this with other civilizations preparing for open contact?
Yes, we have done it with many civilizations. Now, of course, the details will be different depending upon how their society is structured, of course. But we have done this before many, many times. It is one of the techniques that we put forward to again gauge when individuals and societies are ready for open contact. The idea, again, is that it is now a set of very specific steps. Yes, following the formula is still critical, but the idea is that we're giving you specific actions, since we have said action is the language of physical reality. So the specific steps we are giving you are specific languages in your reality that really allow you, as you say, to walk your talk and get more specific frequencies by taking specific actions that are based on the idea of the formula.
You've mentioned ways of informing our governments about the fact that we, the people, are aware of ET intelligent life forms. Should we continue to do that? What would you like? Would you like to address methods on how we should proceed with it? Will it be part of your future steps and or instructions?
Coming up in step 3.
Oh, wow. This question is about homelessness. How can we better address homelessness on our current earth? Having once experienced homelessness myself, I strive to assist those in need. Can you suggest innovative solutions for this issue? How has the Interstellar Alliance tackled homelessness on other planets? Can we adopt similar strategies as we transition to a newer, cleaner version of Earth?
It is very rare for us to encounter within the Interstellar Alliance the idea of homelessness in a negative context. It is something relatively unique on your planet in a negative way. So the idea begins with the psychology of individuals, how they feel about themselves, whether they feel worthy or not. It is a very deep and complex subject and must be pursued on the psychological levels as well as the physical levels of providing shelters for people who don't have any. Because some people on your planet are enveloped within a psychology that actually prevents them from having shelter. There have been experiments done on your planet where what you call homeless people have been given the abilities to have homes, the ability to have what they need, been given sums of money to see how they spend it and whether they will use it to take care of themselves. Many of them have simply squandered these resources and refused in any way, shape, or form to avail themselves of what they can to provide shelters for themselves, to take care of themselves when given these tools, because of the deeper psychology that they may attach to the idea of receiving assistance from people. Some individuals who are homeless simply refuse to believe that if they take the help of people, they won't be under their control. They won't be obligated to them, and it is more important to them to remain free of those obligations as they see it. It doesn't mean they actually would be obligated, but if their psychology makes them see the idea of receiving help as an obligation that limits their freedom, their sense of freedom, they may actually choose to remain homeless in spite of the fact that they could be helped by others. So you have to explore the deep psychology, and you have to allow people to find their own self-worth. Now, again, this is in the negative context we are speaking. There are people who simply do enjoy living in the outdoors without a standard or traditional sense of a home, who can provide for themselves very easily as if they are on a perpetual camping trip. So you have to, again, assess whether or not the person is actually choosing this for a variety of reasons that may actually be positive or may have something to do with the life path they have chosen that can be beneficial for their soul's growth or others around them for their growth by interacting with a person who is free to engage with nature in a way that is non-traditional, outside and without a traditional shelter. So again, you have to assess what is going on, whether this is being created positively or negatively, whether it is part of their soul's path to learn something, how it affects them and how it affects others, but more deeply the psychology of what they think of their own self-worth. And then where you can be of assistance where it's appropriate, you can, again, pool your resources or rearrange your resources to build shelters for people, as many people do, to provide shelters for those that truly want it, truly are capable of taking care of it, truly honoring the help that they are receiving and improving their own self-esteem and self-worth by having a place that supports them. So there are many different avenues and many different directions you can take with regard to this particular situation. And I would suggest that you investigate them all but be aware of the deep psychology behind what people are choosing to experience, consciously or subconsciously.
Thank you.
Yes.
Regarding the exercise of putting a picture of a gray in the window of your home, are any ETs practicing by putting a picture of a human in their window?
Some ETs are playing with that idea. It is not something that is as necessary for them as it is for you, because we can always observe you anyway. So, but some of them, especially some of the hybrid children, are sort of playing with that idea to get used to living among you.
It's fun to think about.
Yes.
This person says, I was wondering if your culture has any human subculture they favor, that they like the vibe or aesthetic in particular.
There are some cultures on your planet that have similar traits to some of the aspects of our civilization, and therefore we could say we can relate to it a little bit more easily. We are similar in vibration in certain limited ways and certain limited expressions, but we don't play favorites. So I won't answer it that way.
So you can't tell us just a few of some of the subcultures that you like?
Again, I'm not playing favorites. So the idea is, again, there are certain cultures on your planet that do have certain expressions that are similar, not identical, but similar to some of the traits of my civilization. For example, the idea of the philosophy of Zen or Tao may be very similar to some of the ways that we view reality and experience reality, similar to the idea of the formula. But again, we don't play favorites. I'm not going to say we like one more than another. That's not how we operate. But we recognize that there may be certain traits in certain cultures or certain belief systems within certain cultures that may have some similarity to what we are familiar with in our society. And that's as far as we will go.
Thank you. Are human beings the densest beings in the universe? Do you ever feel frustrated by our dumbness?
No, because again, we understand you are on a path to learn something. You are not the densest we have encountered. There are others that are as dense or denser. But the idea is, again, as we have said, you are strong souls, strong spirits to have chosen to be in a reality where you forget completely who you are, or as completely as possible to forget who you are. So the idea of the challenges that you have imposed upon yourself means that you are a strong master graduating class. And we certainly applaud your bravery and willingness and courage to experience these things for your own soul's growth, so that your growth can accelerate in ways that other civilizations may not be choosing.
What is something that most civilizations in the universe do not understand or comprehend about humans that seem very alien to them?
Well, one of the things I just mentioned, it is quite challenging for some civilizations, even members of my own society without training like a first contact specialist receives, to understand how it is possible for someone to forget as deeply as humans on Earth do who they really are, to forget their connection to spirit, their connection to source. It is almost unfathomable to many beings that such forgetting can occur.